every time I pick up my drink as we're driving down the road, I would pick up my drink and I would move it around like this, my hand in a circular motion to try to stir up that drizzle, get it all up in the thing or whatever. Not thinking anything of it, just going, this is what I do, right? And I kid you not, my 15-year-old son, without blinking, looks at me, doesn't say a word, and just kind of nods his head, picks it up, starts doing his thing in the same circular motion. That's leadership because it models something for someone else to take action on. Welcome back to the Culture Base Podcast. It is officially March, and we are officially coming up on the end, Blake, of our A Culture series, where we've been walking through the 10 characteristics. Is it characteristics or attributes? We've been saying attributes.
Attributes.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm using the right words. The 10 attributes. Words are important, folks. 10 attributes of an A player, right? And the A player, we've talked about it many times. Obviously, this is episode 10, I think, maybe even 11, because I think we had a couple of prequel episodes before we started getting into the attributes. But today we're going to finish that up, talking about the one that stands alone, and that is leadership. And so, Blake, I think a great place to start here would be for you to help explain to our audience what the relationship of leadership, why does that one stand alone to the other previous 9 attributes that we've talked about so far. And if you're not familiar with what we're talking about in A player, I highly encourage you, just go back and listen to the last 10 or 11 episodes. Just pause right here, go do that, come back and pick it up, because we're going to jump right in with this mega topic today.
Yeah. So real quick, I'm going to just hit all the other ones leading up to this again, because I think it's a great idea. So we have this mega attribute of competency, right? And our competency characteristics are accountable for actions, reliability, and then quality of work. Then we have this next area of an A player, which is their drive and agency. These characteristics are taking initiative, continuous improvement, right? Everything I'm saying right now, you're like, yeah, that's an A player. Then the next one attribute is agility. That the characteristics of that are problem-solving ability, adaptability, and flexibility. The next one is collaboration, right? A players they're not just cowboys. They are people who integrate in and ranch well together, right? So you've got collaboration, which is teamwork and communication. And so almost, I don't want to say that this section is the least of these, but for an A player, I'm not always going to say that this one has to be there. However, when it's there, it is like the multiplier of multipliers. And so leadership stands alone because it impacts everything else. When you've got an A player and someone who's accountable for actions, you're like, yeah, this is good. And they're reliable and they've got great quality work. That's great. Now make that person a leader of people who inspires at a certain level. All of a sudden, that person isn't just accountable for their actions. They're accountable for results in a way that just an A player wouldn't hit that certain level, because they're making everyone better. They're coming in and inspiring people to such a level that A player is just like, you don't even think, oh, that's an A player. You're like, I'm just so glad they're here. You know what I mean? You're like, I am just like, they embody the culture, the values of this organization in such a way that we would be so much worse without them. That's what leadership brings to every one of these different attributes, characteristics. It brings a multiplier effect that the others are more just like what makes it up. This is a multiplier.
Yeah, I love that. And that's why this one stands alone. I hope we can understand that. And it's why we put it right here at the end. It's leading up. Hey, we're identifying all these other attributes, but at the end of the day, we need to see that leadership attribute that carries all of these other ones forward and permeates the rest of the organization, because that's what leadership is. And that's a perfect segue, Blake, into our conversation here about what leadership is versus management. I think oftentimes we get those two confused because we do have managers and we need managers, right? We don't need micro managers, but we do need macro managers, right? We need managers in our organization. And oftentimes we find those right there in the middle of our org chart, and they're vital. And Blake and I always say, and the culture base always preaches to our clients that level, those managers are the biggest culture carriers and culture killers in your organization. So we spend a lot of time focusing on that level of the organization because they are that vital. But leadership, Blake, has often been stated by many people, many leadership gurus out there. John Maxwell, I'm sure, is probably the originator of this because everything goes back to him anyway. But leadership, the way it's different from management is that leadership is influence, right? It's a prime example. Had a road trip yesterday on our way back from Florida, where I went down to the Daytona 500 with my son. Lifelong dream, got it done. It was incredible. Hence the shirt. If you're watching on YouTube, we were on our way back, and my son actually edits these podcasts, so I'm interested to hear what he says about this when I tell this story. But as parents, right? We always talk about leadership and parenthood being kind of parallel. We know as parents, when your kids are younger, they see you do something, they want to do the same thing, right? That's leadership. Leadership is influence because leadership it lends itself, it leads to modeling, right? Leadership leads to modeling. And even yesterday, my son's 15 years old. Even yesterday, we're on our way back. We stopped by a coffee place called Dutch Brothers, which they're in various locations, but we don't have them here. Dutch Brothers is killer. They have I'm normally a black coffee Americano kind of guy, but when I go to Dutch Brothers, I get a frou-frou drink. It's called the Golden Eagle. It's got caramel and vanilla drizzle in it, and we get it iced, right? And so all the caramel sits at the bottom. And so I'm constantly, every time I pick up my drink as we're driving down the road, I would pick up my drink and I would move it around like this, my hand in a circular motion to try to stir up that drizzle, get it all up in the thing or whatever, not thinking anything of it, just going, this is what I do. Right. And I kid you not, my 15-year-old son, without blinking, looks at me, doesn't say a word, and just kind of nods his head, picks it up, starts doing his thing in the same circular motion. That's leadership because it models something for someone else to take action on. I didn't tell my son, all right, son, here's what we're going to do. We're both going to pick up our cups and then we're going to go counterclockwise or clockwise in this direction. And we're going to do that to the count of 10. And then we're going to set it back down. Right. That's too many details, right? That would be getting into a little bit of the management side of things. But what we're talking about here is leadership, is influence. Now, management tends to have a lot more control. Now, I know when we say control, Blake, everybody's like, I don't like that. But we need control in our organizations, right? We talk all the time with a lot of our clients, talk about quality control, right? We need variable control, right? We need outcome control. Like all of these things at the end of the day, like we have to, in some sense, have some type of control. And that's where management comes in. That's where we really need it. And again, it's not micromanagement, but it's boundary setters. Yeah. That's what managers are. Managers are boundary setters, and leaders are influencers and model setters, right? Yeah. Leaders aren't going like, hey, say what I say here. They're just going, do what I do. Managers are going like, here's how we say this. Say this instead, So I think that's the big key understanding difference. You have anything to add there?
Yeah. I think management answers the question, how do we do this better? How do we do this faster? How do we do this more consistently? That's great. But by the way, we're not saying management is the enemy of leadership. That's not what's being said here. It's just we're answering that question, how do we do this better? Leadership's hitting the idea of why does this matter? Like, where are we going? It's hitting the who am I in the way I do things at a certain level. So that influence is so much bigger, and it causes things to happen. We did not say do this thing. It is just causing something to happen. So I like that idea of managers maintain and leaders move, right?
Ooh, so that's good.
I think that both are important, but leadership is an A player aspect. You can have managers who are leaders, you can have leaders who are managers, right? But they are separate ideas. Yeah. And so I think that's what I would add to that.
Yeah, I love it. So Blake, let's get into what we've been talking about this entire series is how to identify these attributes in people when we're considering joining considering bringing them onto our team,
Yeah.
right? We're also talking about, yes, how do we develop people that are currently on our team up into that A player level status, if you will.
Mhm.
But really, how do we identify these potential, or how do we identify, these potential attributes
Yeah.
in people that we might be interviewing or considering bringing on our team? Because we hire slow and fire fast. We really want to make sure that we get it right. And so, Blake, why don't you kind of talk to us a little bit about what does it look like to identify this leadership potential
Mm.
in an A player when considering bringing them onto your team?
Yeah, if leadership is about hitting to the why of something, you want to find someone who's asking a lot of questions to understand the big picture
Mm,
before they're like, "Oh, so you want me to make you a peanut butter and jelly? Here's this, here's this, here's this." Not like, "Hey, why do you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Like, are you
mhm,
allergic to anything? Should I be checking into those?" Like they're looking at the bigger picture. And it's real hard to like everyone's on their A game during hiring. So it's really hard to find some of these things out without looking in between, like looking in the margins of what's said. Um, but a thing that I'll ask myself a lot as I'm hearing people talk is, will I need to give them rules and exact details, or will I be able to just give them a standard and they're going to have the autonomy to go in and do
mm.
that thing?
Yep.
Right. Like, am I
Yeah.
going to be able to just say, here's direction, here's not bad communication here, I'm just saying, like, I'll be able to say a vision clearly well as a leader, I'll be able to give that kind of a vision and they're going to be able to just roll with it, or
Yeah.
am I going to have to tell what it means to first you open your door, like you, that's going back to that whole like peanut butter and jelly sandwich communication thing we've all done. Yeah, I always thought it was the dumbest thing in the world where it was like, yeah, grab some peanut butter and someone put their hand in and grab peanut butter and put it. I'm always like, come on. Like you know what I was saying. But at a certain level, you want people who can think and don't have to have every rule set before them. That will start to give like, oh, I can just give them the standard and they're going to make great things out of this.
Yeah.
Um, Asking questions around or hearing and listening for ways that they made people around them measurably better, that they did things in such a way that rose everyone else around them. That'll let you know leadership. If
Yeah.
every story they talk about, they're the main character, nobody else exists unless it was as like an antagonist in the story, like probably not giving you clear identifiers there.
Mhm.
um, and I would just I'm not saying that they're not a leader in that moment. I would just hesitate to give them leadership status because you like the words they're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
And we tend to do that. We start to grow a bias for those that say the right keywords to us and
Mm.
we're like, oh, I love them. They're great. They're the
Yeah.
best thing in the world. And then you're like, I should probably look them up. And then you're like, oh man, they've robbed 4 banks in the last week. Like, you know what I mean? And of course, you're not looking people up. I know. Um, you're looking for ways in which people would lead before they received permission or a
Yeah.
title. I think of like 4 people in my organization right now who are begging for more. And we don't have a clarity on what that more is. But they're like, oh, I could do this and I could do this. I'm in. Can I jump in? And they're just doing it.
Yeah.
Those are leaders. And
Yeah.
those are the same people whose names pop up every time we're like, who could do this? And then leadership teams like, oh, this person could do this.
Every time.
They're
Yeah.
they're killing it. So you're and obviously that's harder when they're not in your organization to notice that.
Yeah.
But if you're doing your due diligence as a leader of an organization, it is your job to constantly um, a to raise your team up for a player ness. I don't even know the right way to say that, right?
Yeah.
But it is your job to raise the culture up to that level. And so as you're hiring people, your job is to reach out to anybody you can get for top grading purposes to find out the stories you need to find out about
Mhm.
this person. And you don't want it from their mouth all the time. You want to
Yeah.
hear it from other people's mouths. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I would add to that too, Blake. You're one of your company, Ridgeline, the electrical company that you run, has a culture value of being barrier breakers. And that's what I think of when I think of what we're talking about here, asking these right questions in an interview setting. Sometimes it can be open-ended questions, or sometimes it can be too vague of a question to say, tell me about a time when. But I think
Mhm.
this lends itself to that. Tell me about a time when you broke barriers
Mm.
in an industry or in your organization.
Yeah.
It's not breaking rules or breaking standards necessarily. It's breaking barriers of, oh, I thought we assumed that we couldn't do X, but
Mm.
then we tried X and it turns out it led to Z, which was opened up a whole new category for us. Right.
Yeah. That's so good. We have another value, and this is a good one to like you can steal this value if you want, but more so if you're looking for leaders in your organization. And that value is we're passionate life leaders.
Hmm.
And it is such a good idea because leaders are going to be people who invest in other people's growth without being asked. Okay.
Yeah.
But to reach out to your team and say, hey, who's been investing in you? Like who's been reaching out to you, or who's the person you go to ask
Mm.
questions like that you're really curious, you want to know what they have to say. And you're probably going to see the same 5 to 10 people in your organization or whatever percentage that is. You're going to see those people over and over. Those are your leaders. Those are the ones who may not have all the other stuff quite yet, but when that multiplier hits, it makes it look like they do.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep growing in those other areas because they're A players. Well, that leadership's only going to be a multiplier.
Yeah, for sure. So I think any time that you can ask these open-ended questions, we talk about this all the time when we talk about doing interviews, that it's not about the question, it's about what you're listening for behind the answer,
Yeah.
right? And so we have, some interview questions that are kind of outside the box that we do. You can hit us up on Instagram or go to our contact page on our website, and we'll get it to you, a free resource. But I think too, what Blake was saying, he mentioned briefly about asking, don't just hear it from them, but hear it from their references or hear it from others as well.
Mm.
So that's those same type of open-ended, barrier-breaking, passionate life leader-esque type of questions are the good ones to ask
Mm.
when you're calling up references, right? That
Mhm.
interview is just as important. I was just on the receiving end of this 2 weeks ago. A friend of mine was interviewing for a job. They asked if they could put me down for reference. I always say yes to that, as long as I can feel like that I can actually give them a good reference. If I don't feel like I can, I'll be like, is there anybody else? Um, but the person that they were interviewing with called me up and asked me if I had 15 to 20 minutes, and that was an investment of my time, and it was an investment of their time to take 15 and 20 minutes to interview somebody that this person had previously worked with. And they asked specific questions about, have you ever seen her do this, and if so, can you tell me what that looked like and what the scenario was, and
Mm.
different things like that. They asked great questions, that gave them a better picture of who this person was, not from their mouth, but from the influence, that others felt around them, right?
Mm.
And good good leaders, right? When you call up their references, the good leaders are gonna say things like, "Best person I ever worked with. I wish we still worked together. I really cherished our time together.
Mm.
Um, they made me better. They made our organization better."
Mm.
They're gonna be a little bit more, man, I can't really put words to it, but it was great. Like, that's a good answer,
Yeah.
right? Like, they don't have to get super specific. There was this one time when we were on a retreat and the cabin was on fire
Yeah.
and they pulled us all out. Okay, cool. But
Yeah.
like, if they give you, man, there's something indescribable. There's something about a mood or a tone. I was watching a documentary last night and they were talking about this athlete, and when he walked into the back of the room, right? Well, someone walked into the back of the room, everybody's backs are to that right, everybody's sitting and everybody's backs are to that. Like, this guy walked into the back of the room, no one even saw that he was in the room, but you can immediately feel it. Like, obviously that's like legendary folklore kind of status,
Sure.
but you get what we're saying here, that it's a felt thing oftentimes more than it is a very descriptive thing.
Yeah.
So ask the questions to them and to their references
Mm.
to try to get what feeling did that person bring into the room when they walked into the room? What noticeable emotional difference did it carry throughout the organization when they left?
Yeah. That's
Those are
good.
good things too. Like how did they leave as well? So um, anything else on that about kind of how to identify the potential in A players? We do want to mention before we wrap up this episode, we don't want to spend a ton of time talking about how to develop these things within your organization, but I do think it's worth mentioning. If you're upset that you don't have good leaders on your team, but you don't have a pathway for leadership in your organization, then you're the problem. Like you're the bottleneck.
Yeah.
So creating leadership pathways in your organization is just as important as identifying these potential leadership qualities in A players or in people when we're doing those interviews. You have to be able to set something up. Anything, anything is better than nothing, but just make it consistent, make it clear, make it simple,
Mm.
right? Don't overcomplicate it, and make sure you repeat it constantly because we say all the time, like one of the top reasons people leave organizations is what?
I don't know.
You
I'm
don't know,
just kidding. The ability to grow.
right?
Just
The perceived
the perceived ability to grow.
the perceived ability to grow.
That's
The
right.
ability to grow could be there. Like,
Yep.
well, we had all these initiatives.
That's right.
That's like you ever go to Costco or Sam's Club and you walk by and there's a wall of brochures and
Mm.
there's like all these different member perks and oh you could get this member perk and this member perk and this member perk. I'm like I wouldn't know anything about those member perks unless someone was standing at the door every time I left going, did you know about this? Did you know about this? Did you know about this?
Yeah.
So I know those things exist. I don't want them, but I know they exist.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about this that causes listener right now to do nothing is
Mm,
we think that's going to take a lot of work.
mm,
Um, one, maybe, but two, keep it simple.
yeah.
A leadership path in your head, if you say, oh, yeah, there's the ability to grow, you've already made it simple. It's already there. You have it. Now, keep it simple, put it out there and just say, this is what it looks like. If you want to draw stick figures and little fluffy dogs and stuff in there, do that. Like
Yeah.
it does not need to be a 12-point message that breaks down into 90 points here. And if you do this on a Sunday and do this on, does not need to be that. In fact, that kind of crap confuses things.
Yeah.
What you have to say is, and honestly, the more specific tends to be lower entry level into your organization. The higher you get up, the grayer the world gets.
Mm,
Okay. It
mm,
just gets grayer. It doesn't get more black and white. If you're listening to this and you're like pretty entry level in your organization and you're like, yeah, I just want to have a better culture and be a leader. And you're like, I can't wait till it's way more black and white. No, no, no. You're at the best it gets. Okay. You are where it's black and white.
it's pretty
It's
clear.
great. So if it does, then so does that path and what that looks like because you don't want to make it so black and white that it, and this actually reminds me of a story. Um, I had a guy back in the day who I was coaching and on our team, no longer here, but he was on our team and he told me, man, I can't, like, I'm going to grow so far into this company. I said, well, tell me, like, where do you want to go? And he said, I want to be the director of ops and I'm going to be. I said, okay, cool. How are you going to get there? And his response was, I don't know. You're going to have to lay that out for me. I go, doesn't sound like you're the right guy then. And that was it. Like, he was like, what? Well, why? I was like, if you think that it is always going to be so black and white and that you're just going to get every answer handed to you, you're missing it. Okay.
Mm,
Leaders go and find answers to the questions that stir their heart.
that's it.
Managers want to be told everything and think that it's all black and white the higher up you get. It isn't.
Nope.
Okay. Every day is another gray day.
Right. You climb the mountain, when you get closer to what? The clouds.
Mm.
Right. It just gets
I didn't
cloudier.
even think about that. That's good.
It just gets cloudier, man. Just gets cloudier. I love it. Well, obviously, this is not an exhaustive episode on all things leadership. We just wanted to specifically talk about the leadership attribute of A players, how to identify it. Hopefully, we gave you some stuff to think through and look through there. you're going to see a lot more from us on this A player thing. We've got some really cool tools that we're developing to come out, potentially a book, shall I say, about this as well. But next week, or next episode, I should say, we're going to get back into out of a series and into some fun topics that we've been banking up throughout this series. And so next episode, we're going to talk about how processes and systems actually affect culture more than you think. And so we're going to dive into that with you next time on the Culture Based Podcast. Have a great week.